I'm going to introduce Peter to talk about the current events in Ukraine and some of the um, topics revolving around cyber security and what's happening on this not so critical update.
Thanks, John. So, yeah, this is a kind of like an intro article. It's from AP. It's a free for all, but no crippling cyber attacks in Ukraine war. There's been a lot of discussion about why there hasn't been more activity on the cyber warfare front so far from Russia. There's a lot of different opinions. Some people are saying that because they're doing so well on the ground that they don't need the cyber warfare. Some people are saying that they're just not prepared. Some people are saying that they don't have as tight a control on the malware gangs that people thought they had. There's a lot of different opinions, but it's a bit surprising. My personal opinion is we're only 7 days, we're only a week in. Things have not gone as expected for Russia so far. So I think it's a bit premature to talk about it, to be honest. What do you think, guys?
I mean, if that's the case, then by the time it's mature enough to talk about it, it'll be too late, right? I mean, they're escalating. It didn't go as smoothly as they thought. They thought that they could just chase Ukraine's leadership out of town and install their own puppet leaders, and everything would be chill. They got a lot more resistance. Things are not going as expected. If they had this card to play, like, it's time to play it, right? They don't. I think they don't have the capability that we assumed they did.
Well, okay, let's just touch on one thing here. Elon Musk has sent Starlink nodes, I think truckloads of these have arrived in Ukraine because their internet infrastructure has taken a hit. Russia bombed television radio towers to cut out updates, news, and general one-way telecommunications of the civilian population. So when we're talking about Ukraine's catastrophic, no catastrophe has occurred to Ukraine on a cyber level, I think we're a bit wrong, because we still heavily rely on good old telecommunications, be it internet or TV,
which have been
these are both which have been interrupted and are still down. Internet is still up. It's patchy, but some ISPs are up, some ISPs are down. Russia is doing things. They are performing attacks against the Ukrainian infrastructure.
Yeah.
So does that mean the internet is not as important in these situations?
Well, the internet, again, it is up for some. Like, I have a direct link to a Ukrainian family member that is there on the ground. They're on Signal and Telegram. They're still connected. So I think it's certain things are down, some things are up, and it's not as bad as it could be. But also, one more thing, just going to throw this in there. Russia is dealing with a worldwide attack on their cyber infrastructure.
Yeah.
This isn't just because the only people attacking Ukraine are either Russian state-sponsored or, some groups like Conti.
But I think that's the opportunity.
The whole world is attacking Russia.
That's true, but I think that's the opportunity, is not for Russia to attack Ukraine directly, but for Russia to get the propaganda out, to get out fake news stories, to create a appearance that they're doing better than they are to the rest of the world, and they're not doing that at all.
Though they internally is what they care about, the internal propaganda. I don't think they really care about the rest of the world.
Is probably their biggest concern. Internally,
I've heard all sorts of crazy things. I am a bit surprised that there hasn't been larger attacks, or at least larger successful attacks on critical infrastructure, on the industrial sector in Ukraine. I think they could have taken out things like the TV tower or the TV networks more effectively than than bombing them. But I think, you know what? I keep coming back to this. Trying to figure out why they haven't done that is probably too early to say, and it might still happen.
A guess?
A guess
wild
would
guess? No. A wild guess for me is
Okay.
Ukraine is running probably out of date stuff in a lot of their infrastructure. I was there a few years ago. It's not
Yeah.
exactly London or Stockholm in terms of infrastructure.
Which is
Not
ironic.
Not everything is connected to the internet, you know?
Yeah, I guess
Their
that's-
strategy has been flawed, and this attack didn't go as they expected, but kinetic warfare is much more familiar to Russia than cyber warfare.
Yeah,
That is true.
Yeah,
And
It's-
honestly, more appropriate to a ground invasion. Yes, you can disrupt communications. Yes, you can take down services, but you've got to have boots on the ground to invade a country and take it over. I don't know that cyber attack part of the strategy is as important.
I guess maybe I was being too not romantic, but like too kind of like melodramatic in what I was thinking might happen. I thought that as a prelude to any kind of attack. I was going to say, where was I thinking about?
Invasion.
Anyway,
Invasion.
Thank you. Yeah, that's exactly. They
We're just
would do something
investigating
like
Ukraine.
papers, please.
Oddly enough, isn't too far from Russia's truth.
Yeah, well,
Yeah. But go ahead,
so they
Peter.
would do things like shut down, I don't know, hospitals and train lines and electricity power stations, and then give the Ukrainians real issues to be dealing with that would make it easier to kind of send the troops in. And they didn't do that either because they didn't think of it, or because they're holding it in reserve. I think are the three options. And it's probably a combination of all, to be honest. I think they could step up their game. But then I think Mike's right about they're kind of too old school, and it's just it's not part of their strategy. It wasn't part of the way that they approached the situation, and they just don't have the capabilities that we thought they did, because they never bothered developing them as part of their warfare strategy.
But it's probably situational. I think the strength of it is not at the time of the war. It's either in advance or, like we saw in 2016, the subterfuge and propaganda to create influence and confusion and spread misinformation.
Yeah.
By the time you're pulling triggers and dropping bombs, like a lot of that's less relevant.
True, but I mean, if Russia could turn off Signal, the secure communications app inside Ukraine, I think they would. They can't because it's pretty
Doesn't
impossible
work
to do that
way, right?
Yeah, it doesn't work that way. But as an example, there's things like that. If they could turn off the electricity to the whole city of Kiev,
And they're
Then they
targeting
probably
these
would.
things. They are looking
Yeah.
to, right? They are bombing. They're bombing like constantly these hotspot critical infrastructure
Yeah.
locations, because Peter, you're 100% correct. Causing civilian unrest in Ukraine is a huge win for Russia.
yeah,
If you have no electricity, that means no heat. It's early March in Ukraine. It is cold. These are steps that Russia is attempting to take. If there's no communication, misinformation is spread.
So kind of to your point
Um,
from earlier, John, yes, the infrastructure is out of date, but even think about the Colonial Pipeline hack. You could say, oh, preventing refueling is a major disruption to battlefield operations. They didn't disrupt Colonial's ability to move fuel. They disrupted Colonial's ability to get paid for it. In a wartime
Yeah.
situation, that's not the priority. You can still move fuel. You can still create electricity.
and you can take a tally and you can write it on a piece of paper, right? Like you can even just the government could just force you to say, shut up, you're moving this. You don't have a choice. The fuel is going to move.
And to
Right,
that
just-
there's
to
also,
that-
by the way,
to that end, it's much easier to drop a bomb on an electrical plant than it is to try and hack in and get all clever and by interrupting their systems.
Now,
Yeah.
Russia also has the unfortunate fortunate for Ukraine, unfortunate for Russia. They have the I guess the unfortunate internal battle of, do we destroy this because we want this? You don't want a nation of rubble and dead bodies. You want a docile nation. That is obviously where they want a defeated nation. So every time Russia drops a bomb on a piece of critical infrastructure, they're not only costing themselves more money, but also way more work, way more time to rebuild. So every time they do this, they're only hurting themselves, really, in their perfect idea and in their end plan and goal. So
yeah, it's definitely going to be a. Sorry, it was definitely meant to be a invade, take over. All right, shut up, everybody else. No, we're
So
Ukraine's
funny
ours
enough, now new information's come out that it was originally intended to be a 15-day operation, start to finish.
Yeah, so that.
Plus, it doesn't that, and I say operation specifically because after Ukraine, it was Moldova on the map. Most likely after Moldova, that it just goes further out. Who else can they invade? Lithuania, Latvia, Romania. There's all of these countries that used to be under the Soviet Union grip, or near it at least, that Putin would love to get his hands back on. He said, quoted, that he was robbed when the what do you call it? When the Soviet Union fell in 91 or whatever it was, 80, 89, I don't remember. So it doesn't end in Ukraine. Hopefully it does, but in his mind, in their minds, it's only the start.
And they thought it was just going to be they thought they were going to just win by intimidation before it even started.
Right.
Go ahead, Peter.
I was going to say that I just want to put it that there have been some attacks on Russian infrastructure and Ukrainian infrastructure as well. So there's been a massive DDoS attack on one of the networks that is hosting the .ru root name servers. Wow. There's been a huge attack on the WordPress sites, which seems crazy to me, like a bunch of blogs getting taken down. But if you think about the fact that WordPress runs 30% of the internet, that's probably a significant amount of content. There's been it seems to be more on Russia than on Ukraine, to be honest.
Yeah.
There's a couple other things. There's some banking stuff going on, and
I do just want to mention, like, we're talking about the cyber attack elements of this war, and we talked about this before the show. These stories go out of date very quickly, and they pale in comparison in severity to what's actually happening on the ground as a result of this war. But this is kind of the nature of our show. So we take it very seriously. We fully support Ukraine. This is a terrible, terrible situation. Hopefully we, can have some conversation about these technical privacy, security topics that we specialize in, and let that be an additional perspective that doesn't dilute the conversation in any way.
Or downplay the severity.
Also, I would say, we talk about this kind of stuff because we work in the industry and the cybersecurity and but we're not even that good at talking about that side of things. So talking about actual war and politics is probably a bad idea.
I think it's better to just take a neutral stance on the topics. Obviously, we are all in full support of Ukraine and constantly thinking about them and doing, whatever is possible from where we are, obviously so far away. But agreed, we are terrible at talking even about the topics we're professionals in. So taking a neutral stance in the conversation is very important. But of course, also fuck Russia. Like, let's not, get it twisted here.
Yeah,
I'm actually in a Telegram group just as a viewer. I'm not participating. Called the IT Army of Ukraine, and Zelensky, the Ukrainian leader, asked the world to come together with all of their collective, I guess, cyber power. Wow, I just thought of that. Such a good term.
No, it's not.
to
John.
attack Ukrainian infrastructure. And I'm just watching this unfold.
Protect.
They're sending new targets every day in this group.
Oh
And
yeah, I heard
all
about
of a
this
sudden
group.
the Kremlin website is down.
Yeah.
And within minutes, I mean, these guys have, this is black hatters, gray hatters, white hatters that have a lot of firepower in terms of, servers and botnets and whatnot. And they are just directing everything they've got at new targets every day. You can go look at DDoS maps and just see the sheer amount of traffic being poured into Russia is insane. Their load balancers can't even, they can't even do a thing. They're just overloaded.
As you were talking through that, not to drag this on a whole lot longer, but it made me think of in terms of the technology impact on the world, right? The impact, it makes me think of the Arab Spring, where social media was kind of a big part of getting the word out. Here, that's almost like the word is out, everybody knows that's going on, but what you just described is kind of an evolution of the technology where it's not just helping us spread information, but actually take action in a situation like this. So that I think is an interesting
from across the
aspect
world.
to this.
Without having to set foot in the country, you can participate in its support directly, not even monetarily, just directly.
Which I think might potentially cause big problems if there's any kind of retaliation. That Putin already said that if he considers any attack on Russian satellites as an act of war. So,
and those satellites have been taken down by rogue hackers. Like, this is
right.
You have become enemy, public enemy number one by doing this. And while retaliations are real and definitely are occurring, there's no doubt in my mind that Russia has, like, we're talking about one of the worst countries on earth with a track record so long it could probably, it could be a book. They're gonna go after people if they find out who participated. If there will be a Russia by the end of all of this.
And again, while it's, satisfying to talk about these successful attacks on Russia, we still have Kyiv under siege. Multiple Ukrainian cities have fallen. Hopefully, by the time we record again next week, there's better news for Ukraine and increasingly bad news for Russia.
Agreed.
Also fucking dumb.